I wasn't too happy with the Resident Evil 3 remake, but I did find Resident Evil Resistance to be really interesting in the 2 betas of it that I played, so at the very least I had something else to look forward to. After playing it fairly consistently for about 2 weeks, I find this to be a really good asymmetrical multiplayer game, a serious contender against the reigning champ of Dead by Daylight. And while I don't think it'll manage to overtake the King's throne, I do think that it's well worth looking into for those who want something a little different. Resistance is meant to be a non-canon, little bit of a goofy side story in the Resident Evil universe. In order to test their new viruses, the Umbrella Corporation kidnapped some hapless citizens, inject them with a strain that makes them a little more powerful than usual, and sets them loose in a Resident Evil-style maze. This is all overseen by a mastermind who blocks their every advance in order to prevent their escape. Originally, this game was supposed to have a proper single-player campaign, but it seems like that's been quietly swept under the rug. There is offline content in the form of a practice mode that's meant for the player to learn the layout of each map, as well as the effectiveness of all the game's weapons and skills. So that's really nice. Definitely something that I'd like to see other games incorporate, and the tutorial isn't half bad either. Each survivor and mastermind have their own unique set of skills, such as Valerie healing groups of allies at once, and January is able to disable cameras, which the mastermind uses to observe and take part in the game. All of the masterminds have the same basic abilities in that they're able to draw cards from a deck and use them to place monsters and traps on the field, as well as various other effects. Each mastermind also specializes in one way or another, such as Daniel having particularly effective zombies when he takes direct control of one, and Alex having more effective traps, as well as an ultimate bioweapon that's unique to each mastermind.
Well, at least you're not William. You can still help me.
Each map is split across 3 levels, and they always have the same objectives, such as collecting keys or destroying enough biocores in order to open the exit. At the start of and in the middle of each level is a shop where points earned in the match can be spent on new weapons and supplies, gradually upgrading the player for the trials ahead. Every single positive outcome that the survivors put forth, such as dispatching zombies, destroying traps, or completing main objectives, will add to the total timer at the top of the screen. Conversely, every little negative aspect, such as receiving basic attacks from zombies or triggering a trap, even if it doesn't deal any direct damage, will take away from the total time left. If a survivor dies, then they can be revived before they bleed out. Otherwise, they'll respawn at the beginning of the map's current level. In this way, dying isn't a major punishment in and of itself. However, it does reduce a large chunk of time, which encourages the team to look out for each other, and this can be helped by bringing up the map whenever you do, showing where your allies and discovered objectives are in real time. The main goals are simple. The survivors need to complete all the objectives within the time limit in order to escape, while the mastermind wins if the survivors run out of time. And it's surprisingly really exhilarating to be on the brink of defeat, but keep managing to just barely pull through, constantly extending the time little by little and making it to the next level.
Look, folks, door's open!
Would you like to explain how the fuck you have done this? Look at you all, you have no chance! We give you the right fucking virus, what the heck?
Well, at least you're not dead.
So even if you lose, it's still a lot of fun to put up a good fight. There's also a customization aspect to the game, which ranges from raising the attack power of either melee weapons or firearms, gaining a bonus to currency to spend more at the shop, or completing specific objectives faster, among other things. And of course, the same goes for the mastermind as well, allowing them to boost the stats of their monsters, traps, their own camera-equipped firearms, or whatever else. Although there are only 4 maps, with 3 levels each, all the objectives are randomized to a certain degree, which does a lot to help keep the game exciting. The mastermind can even create their own personal layout, which is surprisingly fun to do. There are also just enough characters for both masterminds and survivors that the opposing team will need to adapt to stay one step ahead. This is mainly because no one knows who they're facing against until the match has already begun. So flash grenades are recommended as counters against G. Birkin or Tyrant, while blue herbs are needed to counteract Alex's stronger poison attacks. But any mastermind can lean towards a poison-centric build as well, so you never really know. For the most part, it becomes a game of soft counters. Tyrone and Martin have stun abilities that can help shut down a Daniel mastermind who's taking control of zombies, while January, Becca, and Jill have strong ranged attacks to keep any mastermind's camera shut down. But the mastermind in turn does have a lot of options available to them. They just need to get creative and figure out some way to surprise the survivors enough in order to deplete all of their time. It's a pretty cool game, but there are quite a few issues that bring down the whole experience. First and foremost is the game's progression system. Depending on a player's performance after a match, their characters will permanently rank up, allowing them to equip a wider range of passive bonuses to stand a greater chance in future matches. And these perks are no joke. Customizing your character the right way can make a huge difference, especially if you're looking to play a specific role on the team. Same goes for the masterminds. They're all severely limited in their options until they hit at least rank 5, which means that you're simply going to lose a few early matches and there's not much you can do about it. I get that a progression system is in place to encourage people to keep playing, but for me, it makes me want to drop the game, especially when there's no skill-based or experience-based matchmaking whatsoever. So even though I do have some decent options available to me at rank 17, I still feel like I'm at a disadvantage when my opponents are at rank 24 and 43, or sometimes even higher. When you play as a mastermind, you better pray to a higher power if you see someone dressed in all gold. These are the people who know how to exploit the game, like how Tyrant can't touch you as long as you constantly slip through doors. It's the same kind of nonsense that can make Dead by Daylight really annoying at the higher levels of play. The meta in this game started with the Mastermind's machine guns being far too overpowered, until people discovered that cheap rapid-fire weapons, like the revolver, can make short work of any camera, and even prevent it from taking action for a lengthy amount of time. It gets to a point that a team of survivors who know what they're doing will barely allow a mastermind to take any action at all, especially if they're a lower rank. At least leveling up is a lot faster and more straightforward than how it is in Dead by Daylight. Even so, this isn't to say that the game still can't be fun and challenging. As a survivor, you need to be extra vigilant and be on the lookout for whatever tricks the mastermind might be throwing out there. On the other hand, as a mastermind,
These creatures should never have been made. But at least they prove useful here.
you have to be as obnoxious as possible. And believe me, I know it sucks to have a zombie go kamikaze while my team is at the shop too. But it's so much fun and hilarious that I really can't help myself. When you get a team that's experienced and willing to fight hard, and a mastermind who really knows what they're doing, it's a surprisingly engaging and close match. Granted, this is a lot harder to do with random players on your team, but in my experience, everyone is generally willing to help each other out, and the map does a great job at keeping the team on track. Unfortunately, the biggest issues are the game's netcode and, to be blunt, its stability. I would say at least half of the matches have some form of minor lag, while about 20% of them will be straight up unplayable. Enemies will even react cosmetically to receiving gunfire, but they won't take any damage unless the stars and planets align. Shotguns are the worst for this. You're actually better off not going for a headshot, or otherwise you'll need to be really patient. Masterminds can have a similar issue too, with rifle shots pretty much going right through a survivor. It really sucks, but perhaps even more bizarre are the glitches. This one is probably my, quote-unquote favorite glitch that I've seen. Check the timer. My team has nearly 5 minutes on the clock, a ton of time remaining, and I'm at full health. Then, suddenly, I'm grabbed by a zombie and the clock spirals out of control, immediately jumping to negative 285 seconds. I don't even understand what followed after. My health is depleted, but I still made it to the exit, and the match counts as a loss anyway. Oh, but I've got more. One time, I shot a survivor with my grenade launcher, and he wouldn't stop erupting into fireworks. I don't know what's going on here. I seem to have my leg caught in 2 traps at once. Either that or I got caught between dimensions. And then there's the time that I literally just phased through a locked door. Because, sure, why not? There's also the infamous issues that many players can't even get into a match as a mastermind. For me, it seems to take an average of about an hour and a half before I can finally get in a match. The longest I have recorded is 3 hours and 52 minutes. I'm surprised it actually connected me through after all that. My brother, on the other hand, lives on the opposite end of the country and has double the internet speed that I do. For him, he gets into matches within a couple of minutes at most. So I'm guessing it has to do with both the region and connection quality of the host. Regardless, the netcode in general is still way worse than it should be. And God forbid that a teammate quits out. This Becca player on the opposite corner of the map had the key, which is now sitting on her corpse. But I can't get to it with all of these other items in the way. Seriously, this is ridiculous, and I'm wasting time trying to pick up this key. If it wasn't for the terrible netcode, matchmaking issues, the glitches, I'd love to give this game a higher recommendation and, personally, more of my playtime. But clearly, this game isn't even finished. However, that isn't to say that the idea behind the game is necessarily bad. It takes the basic controls from the remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3 and puts the player in multiplayer matches with variable results. Oh, and hey, would you look at that? Defensive weapons! What a treat! I sure wish Jill could do that. Wait a second. For the mastermind side of things, it's also a neat, real-time dungeon master kind of game that demands a lot to keep track of, but without being overbearing. I will say that the overall netcode did get noticeably better when Jill got added to the game. As for if this is due to some maintenance on the back end, or if it's because there are more players now to help make more connections in matchmaking, I'm not sure either way. But even so, it still has a long way to go before the netcode is at an acceptable level. It's most definitely not worth paying $60 for, even if you're getting the Resident Evil 3 remake along with it. But at some point in the future, if the games end up getting separated and Resistance goes for about $20, and if by some miracle people are still playing, then yeah, this wouldn't be half bad. If nothing else, it's definitely the most fun I've had with an asymmetrical multiplayer game since Dead by Daylight, and I'd like to think that that's saying a lot. Thanks for watching my review on Resident Evil Resistance. I also put up a review for the Resident Evil 3 remake last week, so you can check that out too if you're interested.